Okay, now the time has come where we are up to step number 7, and we are going to tie the shock cord to our shock cord mount, which is already on the motor tube and centering ring. The epoxy set up good, and I know some of you probably are like, why did he glue those rails on? And I wanted to come back and let you know in this segment, I know it's not necessary, and I made the comment earlier that, you know, wherever I can put extra strength, that's good. I'm relatively new to this rocket epoxy, so I thought it would actually be a great opportunity to practice laying down some fillets. So that's partly why I wanted to epoxy these on the way I did, was it got me some good practice. So when I get to where I'm actually gluing the fins on, I won't be intimidated by the fillets. I'll be more comfortable with working with this style of epoxy. But the fact that it does give extra strength on something, hey, why not? So, but it's really strong, solid build now with that epoxy. So the next step is, again, attaching the cord. Now you're probably wondering, what in the world is he doing here? Well, a technique I want to try, I've seen on their website actually, they wrap this with masking tape after they tie the knot to give it some heat protection from the blast of the ejection charge. And I had some perfect size heat shrink tubing already here in my workshop, so I thought, well, I'll just use heat shrink tubing instead of wrapping it with tape. I think it's a cleaner installation, it looks better, but then you're going to say, well, it's going to be down the tube, you're never going to see it again. This is true, but it's peace of mind. It's just, I know what it looks like inside, I want it to look good, so that's the way it is. So this is a pretty simple step. It's just simply running the shock cord through the eye bolt and then tying a double knot on it. Really, that's all there is to it. So I'll go ahead and do that. You can never have it too tight, because we're never going to access this again. So there's our first knot, and then here's our double knot. Okay. Now what I'm going to attempt to do here is actually, in addition to running this up the heat shrink tube, just to give it some more purchase power, I want to glue a little stub of wood. This may sound weird, but it'll make sense in a bit. To the tip of this shock cord mount, slide it in, and then when I heat shrink it down, it's going to clamp onto that knob sticking up, which will help prevent any movement down the road of this ever coming off. So I've got a little wedge piece I made out of just a little scrap of wood here, and actually I'm going to flatten it just a little bit. I'm going to take some CA glue. Now CA glue is good because it'll wick into the fabric of the shock cord. So I'm just going to run a little dab of glue. Actually, I want to determine how far up. I'm going to run the heat shrink to about here. So I want the knob as far back as I can, because it's going to be hard to run it through there. So I'm going to make life on me a little bit easier by setting it further back. Again, is this overkill? Yeah, it is. But it's fun. And I enjoy trying new little techniques and ideas. If it makes it stronger and better, then by all means, why not? You know, is it overkill again? Yes. But I'll just take a quick spray of some accelerator on there. just can't get that any tighter, which is good. Okay, then we're going to lay the two ends flat. Oh, actually, I need to run the heat shrink up. And now I need to feed this down the tube. And let me take a little dowel to help push it up in there. And I got extra long heat shrink here for the purpose of, this is going to go well beyond the end of the tube, but this is going to give some heat protection from that blast as well. So we're not getting direct flame and fire and heat directly onto the orange cord. There's going to be a good 6 to 8 inches there as a buffer. Okay, so now we've got that as far back as we can. And then I'm going to additionally wrap some electrical tape around this connection as well. So with that, let's go ahead and hit it with our heat gun. I'm trying to blow away from the tube because I don't want to heat the cardboard. Flip it over. Now this is the end that's going to get caught on that little stub of wood. Okay. Yep. I'll show you real quick. So as that cools, it would catch on that to help prevent it from ever pulling out. So that's going to give some security on that end. And then we'll just do the rest. Okay, so there we have it. Good heat resistant protection for our shock cord. That's never going to come off. Now, like I mentioned earlier, I'm going to wrap some electrical tape around this whole joint. Just to provide a little bit extra security. Why not? Okay, I'm going to call that a pretty robust and foolproof shock cord mount. Okay, now the next step, moving on to step 8. If I said that wrong, this was step 7, by the way. But now we're up to step 8. And we need to prepare the aft centering ring with, by the way, always keep a little dish for all your small parts. You won't lose stuff that way. But take the yellow cord that comes with it. And again, we need to prepare this for installation. Now the trick to this is, if you remember earlier I mentioned the numbers are going to go toward the inside of the rocket. So this is going to be facing outward. And we want to run a cord through. We want to leave some hanging out, and we want to go this way. Now you want to loop the outsides around the fin slots. You don't want them inside the fin slots because then they'll interfere with the fins gluing in to position. So then we'll just loop them back and forth like a weave. Okay. And then what we want to do is just tie these two ends off to each other. Oh, you'd think I just learned how to tie a knot. Alright, so then we want to kind of pull these loops out a little bit so we got something to grab onto. Somewhat equal in length. Just kind of wiggle as you pull there, kind of work them out. Okay, so now I've got good anchor points. So once I get this centering ring in, I can grab these loops and just pull it right back out of the rocket. So there we go. Now the next step will be actually gluing the whole assembly here to the tube. So let me get the epoxy and ready for stuff like that. Okay, the goal in this step is to convert a flat, squared off leading edge on the fins to a rounded off leading edge, giving better performance, more speed, higher flights. And to do that, typically people will take a sanding bar and just sand a round leading edge. First of all, that's very tricky to do, to get symmetrical curves, and then not only to get it on one fin, but then duplicate the same curvature on the other two. So what I've elected to do is go with a router on a routing table, and I'm running a 1/4 inch bull nose router tip that will form and curve off a perfect symmetrical 1/4 inch diameter radius around the leading edge of each fin. So what I'm going to do now is just run these fins through the router, and we'll come out with a round leading edge. Okay, so this next step's a pretty big step. We're going to be gluing and permanently attaching the motor tube inside the lower body tube. I've gone ahead and pre-mixed up some rock epoxy. Did that off camera just to save some time. And now the instructions call for just a tack glue with CA glue to get things in position and dried. And then you go in afterwards and fill in with fillets. We will do the filling in after everything's dry, but I want to put a nice smooth coat of epoxy on the bottom as opposed to just tack gluing. I will leave some spots open for tack gluing, but I want to get as much epoxy adhesion over CA adhesion as possible. So now one of the instructions do mention rounding off the fins. I've test fitted this numerous times and there's no issues with fitting the fins or the centering ring over the fins. They do call for, well, I'll show you what that is. I'll do it real quick. We've got plenty of working time on this epoxy. So let me take my sanding stick. Now there's only certain places you're to sand. We're to sand in the upper tab on the rear, so the rear centering ring will fit in. So if this is the rear, we want to round off just a little bit on this edge right here. Let me do that real quick on all three of these. Okay, so I've got the back of the fins rounded off just a little bit to make sliding on the ring a little bit easier. In order to apply the epoxy down the tube, I've pre-marked on my dowel here the 5 3/4 and 6-inch mark, which are the length down the tube that the centering ring is going to be on. Now we're going to bring the motor tube in from the front, so it's going to push any excess glue into the fin bay area. So it'll build up a little fillet on its own on the inside. We can go back in later and add a fillet on the inside of this side of the tube after everything's dried and done. I've got both medium and thick. I'm probably just going to use the medium CA glue for the tacks because I don't want to build up too big of a bulge where I apply the CA, because that might interfere with our fillets down the road. So I'm just going to start at it here. You can watch as we go along. Let me add a bead down here. Okay. Okay, so we've got the epoxy in, everything's tacked down. Now I'm going to pop this ring out before any glue seeps into it and it becomes permanent to the rocket body prematurely. There we go. Okay, so there we have it. So now looking down the tube, I can verify that we've got good glue joints down the seams. And I'm going to sit it upright to help take any load or strain off the individual fins. Now I do have a lot of excess glue here, so what I can go ahead and do is lay down some fillets down on the, because I've got it tacked, I can start filling in around the centering ring a little bit. Okay, I'll be completely honest with you. What I would feel safer doing is just verifying that everything is centered again with the ring, and then letting the epoxy that's there set before I add the fillets inside, because I don't want to risk moving things and bumping things out of position. So let me just verify one more time that the centering ring is in a good spot. Like everything's aligned well, the ring went on. Okay. Popped into position there. Okay, the fins are still, they didn't pop out, everything's still holding well. Alright, so we're going to let this dry overnight before I do any more work to the fillets. There we go. Okay, so we're going to set this aside and we will pick up this segment again when this is cured.